welcome to Biohackers Podcast Live. My name is Teemu Arena, and we are back after a few weeks of a break. And what is really interesting this week is that we will have at least 3 of interviews coming up. Today we have Dr. Emilia Vuorisalmi, and we are going to be talking about love and hormones and relationships, and if you really need them for feeling love. And also we will have on Thursday Max Lugaver, one of the keynote speakers of Biohacker Summit, also on the show, as well as Mad Ventures, Tunna and Riku. And it's going to be exciting. So we will be sending these, as always, live to all our channels on YouTube and Facebook, as well as Instagram. So welcome to the show. So today my guest is Dr. Emilia Vuorisalmi, and you are also coming to Biohacker Summit to be part of the Biohacking Women panel that we have on the second day on Saturday. It's going to be a deep dive into how females can take biohacking. Basically, how females can see biohacking from a very different light, perhaps, than men do, because there's definitely gender differences when it comes to how you can optimize yourself. Many things are obviously the same, but there's a lot of things that females especially need to pay attention to. So with that, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Yeah, cool. So you're a doctor, and I guess you are trained in, are you a general physician or are you special?
Trained in a very traditional way here in Finland.
Right.
And but my journey started actually, let's say 10 years ago. I had been living in the United States. I came to Finland and I started to practice so-called normal medicine actually first on the public side and then on a private side. But everything changed when I was experiencing a serious heartbreak a couple of years ago, and I was very ill. I was basically doing everything right. I was doing yoga, eating right stuff.
These are the things you started practicing after?
No, I was doing all that always. I'm always been into health and kind of doing everything that we talk now, taking cold showers, whatever. I was doing all that, but I was still miserable. I was having very severe sleep problems. I would be, lying on a spike mat in the middle of the night and just be like, oh my God, am I dying here? Painkillers were not helping. I had brain fog, if I was taking the stairs up, my heart rate would not go down. Kind of a very severe burnout symptoms.
So the burnout symptoms were related to basically the heartbreak.
Well, I didn't know that, but what happened was that then, I went and visited a doctor and they took all tests, everything looked fine. They scanned my whole spine and head with MRI. And kind of then the conclusion was that I was having some problems with my spine, and there was nothing to do. So I would most likely have to suffer all this rest of my life. But I was like, hey, come on, this can't be true. Something has been changing during the last years, because I was totally healthy and now I'm feeling like this. And I realized that the only thing that had changed was my love life. And that was the moment I decided to find out what love does to our brain and our body, and what is the role in love when it comes to health.
So then you became a love doctor, and you also wrote a book, High on Love.
Yeah, I wrote a book and I became a love doctor, just to make sure. So the book became a bestseller here in Finland. Right. So then they started to call me a love doctor, which is for me kind of an interesting title, as what I really talk is how we can balance the love hormones no matter where we are in our lives, whether we are in a relationship or not. So I'm not kind of curing relationships. We have a great psychologist for that.
Yeah. So, so you noticed elevated heart rate, maybe a highly active sympathetic nervous system.
Extremely active.
Anxiousness, perhaps. Also
all of that.
Thoughts.
Very poor memory.
Right.
Basically everything. And now I know, let's say 10 years looking back there, I think one of the major issues was that I was doing pretty much I told right, but I had forgotten to breathe the correct way.
Okay.
So even I was doing yoga and all that, I was still, the girl who would suck in your stomach and not let your diaphragm, really go down and tell your parasympathetic nervous system that it's all fine.
So breathing was key for you.
I think now it is, because of course in life there's been stressful situations after that as well. And now I always pay a lot of attention, into breathing. And it's also become now automatic. So basically I do breathe right, I would say now.
Right.
So that was kind of this, I called it ensiapupakkaus, like first aid kit. So it's like the breathing, all that. But the real stuff that then made me recover, I would say, was actually a very kind of a deep journey more into myself, which now I talk about creating my own or your own sustainable love system, which means basically finding the same hormones that basically, let's say, the Harvard long study, happiness study, which we all know about, proves that the key to happiness is healthy relationships, social relationships. But right now, more people are dying because of loneliness than overweight, and 50% of relationships are ending. So my question was that how can I achieve that state of happiness without a relationship?
Right. So what are they dying from when they die from problems in relationships? What is
No, I said that more people are dying of loneliness because basically.
And what is
loneliness?
What is the actual thing that they?
When people die when they're lonely. Yeah. So I would tip it's a combination of not having enough oxytocin, which causes stress problems. It's kind of, as it's not that simple, but that's kind of one of probably the root causes that the elevated stress comes not having people to be in real contact. Also, kind of, there's a lot of other stuff. Yeah.
How about monks who decide to be lonely, like on a mountain? Like, they're not probably dying of lack of oxytocin.
No, because this is kind of the system. It's how what I now write. I talk about this a lot. So it's basically, I had to choose, put the line somewhere. So I choose the three main hormones, because if we take a look at the crazy high state of love when we meet somebody and we're crazy in love. So basically then our dopamine levels are super high.
Right.
Because of that, we have some serotonin drops, which makes us feel like, oh my God, will this last? Will he love me, as much as I love him? We might even now, as it's a Tinder generation, so we probably even don't even want to try, because it's very stressful state. Our cortisol levels are really high.
Right.
So, but after that, if we success to go through that phase, let's say, suffer that year and a half.
Yeah, and probably also it's not suffering. People
not suffering. It was a joke. It's supposed to be a great phase.
People have high dopamine levels, so that's probably why they don't necessarily see any problems.
No,
in the beginning, so because all the good things just overpower anything that seems to be a little bit off, maybe the other person.
It's also, and our prefrontal cortex is not working.
Right.
So basically, that's why we don't see the problems. If the friend comes and say like, "Hey, that guy, he just came out from jail. He's maybe not that good for you." You're like, "How can you say that? He's like perfect." We don't see it, and then after 2 years, when our brain kind of normalizes, we realize we usually think that he has changed or she has changed, but actually our brain has changed. And then the chemistry has changed. So basically in a good relationship, we have these three hormones in a very nice, stable,
which are
dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Yeah. Of course, there are many others, but these are the main components. So then I started to kind of dig deeper and think like, what would it be? What are the sustainable sources for dopamine? Because as we know, we can do a line of Coke or drink some booze and get a little hype, but what if we think really about the sustainability?
Right.
So then I started to talk more and find out about meaning. Finding the monk, he has a meaning. So that's why he...
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Aren't we living actually in high dopamine society?
Very high.
Because if you think of like the way how we are rewarded all the time by social technologies, I mean, those are triggering some of our very primitive behavioral needs. And this is what Silicon Valley is definitely like going after. So people feel connection and rewarded by attention and likes and sharing and all that. So they kind of get a lot of the dopamine. Then there is also easy access to all kinds of entertainment, television, games that do the same. Basically, they think how they can get you hooked into very basic reward mechanism. And then there is the whole epidemic of easy access to pornographic material, which, according to some studies, seems to make younger men less interested in the opposite sex without all the reward. And also, I mean, dopamine is kind of a signaling molecule that also when it's released, you need more stimulus to get the same amount from the same kind of activity. So then people get into addictive behaviors in so many things, and relationships can be also
well, this
addiction.
Is
right?
I talk a lot about this, and I call it like empty calories. Basically, we are eating in McDonald's all the time because when I go to Instagram and I'm feeling kind of a little anxious, and I decided to post a pretty picture of myself. So I start getting these dopamine rushes because I'm waiting how many likes, who will like it, who will comment. And when somebody will say like, hey, you look so pretty, I give serotonin. Oh, my tribe digs me, I'm accepted. It's great. But the problem is there's no oxytocin. We're not in a real contact. And that's why 10 minutes after, I'm probably feeling more miserable than before that. So it's the same thing. It's, if going to a McDonald's every now and then, it's fine. But if you start hanging out there every lunch, every dinner, it will make you sick. Right. And this is exactly what you're describing, what's happening. Same with Google. You go there, and 2 hours after you have bought a mat that you don't need or whatever, checking out some pictures. And you're definitely right with the pornography. But also I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. And I'm very concerned, not about her, but in general, the teenagers, because they do get so much dopamine of all this social media and stuff, that there are some research that the teenagers don't fall in love anymore because they are not needing it anymore. It's the same as, if you're addicted to drugs, you're not interested in love.
Yeah.
So you're getting your fix from there.
Or if you watch too much porn, then you are not necessarily interested in just regular intercourse, which seems to be one of the things. And many biohackers actually talk about the fact that if you want to be a fully optimized human being, you should definitely sustain yourself from this
porn,
kind of external stimulation. And Tim Ferriss wrote in the 4-Hour Body book also about like avoiding ejaculation for that. If I remember correctly, the sweet spot was maybe every 6 or 7 days or something like this. Yeah. And then you have also high levels of motivation on a very natural way.
Yeah, but that's like what pro athletes have been doing, knowing not they probably don't do the 7 days, but at least the night before the game.
Right.
That you don't want to waste that.
So maybe the thousands of years old teachings on Tantra, for example, that also promote the idea, especially in men, to avoid ejaculation might be also a really important source of higher performance. Yeah,
as a doctor, I must say that there's probably like the balance again, because then again, there's a lot of, if you think about state hypertrophy, so then again, it's important to ejaculate for to prevent that.
Exactly.
So I think it's it's once again, there's always the balance, how you do
prostate it. Problems or performance.
What do you want? But then also I must say that the good news for people that are watching porn is like the recovery. It's been proven that our brain recovers pretty well, like 2 months, and it will start to normalize, because it's a lot of people don't notice that, for example, they don't turn on anymore with their girlfriend or with their boyfriend because of the porn, and they don't know that it's the porn. They think it's the person.
Yes,
but
they associate the lack of interest.
Then it's good to have a break, kind of detox, and then see how things will feel.
So let's go back to the heart.
We went from meaning to porn quite quickly.
Yeah, let's go back to the real meaning of relationships. So people get really deep into this symbiotic relationship that when it breaks, it feels like you're severed of a limb, basically. So suddenly you feel very empty and alone, which many people experience when they lose someone in their close relationships. It could be also a family member, but in terms of a long relationship
or work relationship,
romantic relationship. So then we get elevated levels of stress, and that's probably an evolutionary survival mechanism that kicks in. Basically, the need to belong, the feeling of being safe. Now, I want to ask you in this context, now in terms of differences between men and women. So from an evolutionary perspective, if a woman decides to hang around with a man to reproduce, probably there's a need for some safety from the man, and also access to food and so on, like just from a hunter-gatherer perspective. And in terms of men, there's probably some different drivers that are related to that relationship. So there is obviously differences here. So how do you see that?
Well, from the biological evolution or biological perspective, of course, there are differences, because as we know, men can spread their semen very efficiently. And it also depends whether are very dopamine high or serotonin high male, as they are, it's been shown that they have different strategies to spread their semen. So, which would mean that the serotonin high people would rather have more kids with the same spouse or same person, and the dopamine high, they would probably they are more prone to have various relationships.
Like alpha male with
alpha male is more a testosterone driven characteristic, but it's I would say like these are the guys, let's say 50,000 years ago. So the serotonin guy was the guy who would take care of the camp or whatever, and the dopamine guy would go through the jungle, or Columbus would go and find or you probably are dopamine high. You want to come up with new stuff all the time and biohack and all that. I'm very dopamine high. So we do take bigger risks. We don't think about safety as much. I wasn't afraid to kind of quit traditional medicine, way of practicing medicine, to do something I really feel meaningful and
I was just recently, I was in Ukraine in a very cool biohacking conference, and I met a geneticist who said that there are some genetic differences that actually make the way how the body encodes dopamine receptors, that you can have high affinity to dopamine. So meaning that you're more likely to be rewarded, you're more likely to be kind of that person who is excited always to get into new projects, and generally speaking, like also maybe suffers of anxiety because there's so many opportunities to deal with. And then there's people who just focus on one thing. And so there might be some genetic reasons also why.
They are, and it's been genetically proven. And the dopamine high people, they are usually more prone to addictions and all this kind of stuff. But the question also I was answering about this reproductive stuff. So of course, women, because as we are the ones carrying the baby for 9 months, so we kind of are in a way a little bit more even selected in that phase,
right?
Than like these are kind of things that we don't talk a lot, but on some subconscious level, I think that's why we do have a lot of. In my book, I do write about all this, and I think it's great because when we know, it's like, well, it's normal. I feel like that. For example, guy feeling that even he's very in love with the girlfriend, sometimes he might feel lust for somebody else, and it's biologically totally natural, and it doesn't mean that you don't love her. It's just biology.
So basically what's going on there is that you can have simultaneously high oxytocin, that you're attached to a close relationship, but you also have a natural tendency and drive for new reward mechanisms.
Yeah, and this again, it's a very kind of our brain is very complex. So there's cultural reasons. There's a lot of things that affect how we feel and how we.
How much do you think that it is in terms of that people are in monogamistic relationships, that it is cultural conditioning versus natural conditioning?
Well, I think I also wrote about this. So if we look our ancestors, so they lived in these serial monogamous relationships, which we still do, basically. So at least I have been living. So you have a long relationship, you end that, you have another long one. And so I don't know, that's at least one, of course.
That's the evolutionary basis.
I don't know. I'm not specialized in this one, but I have been interviewing, I am spending a lot of time with Markus Rantala, who's a very, she's a professor in this area. And this is at least how he sees this.
Right. Okay. So there is modern interest and tendency to also look at polyamorous relationships. And is that somehow related to, this fact that it's very easy to find, relationships and so on? The people who are into polyamorous relationships, many of them, I see that they actually suffer a lot at some point in terms of heartache and problems dealing with all the drama that comes with those, and also personal attachment issues and fears and so on. And several people who are proponents of polyamorous relationships, you could take people like in the parking community, there is Aubrey Marcus has become very famous for talking about that. The way how I see it, listening to him, is that he sees that as a evolution in terms of who you are. So it puts you very strongly face to face with the things that maybe are traumas coming from your childhood, or any issues that basically require you to work on yourself. So he sees those relationships and all that as a way of getting rid of the ego, or develop human consciousness also.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. In my way of thinking, I see every kind of trauma, every heartbreak, every loss we have in life as an enormous possibility for growth, as we do at that state lost this. If I again start with this language of hormone language, so we lose these hormones, and suddenly we have to create a total new balance. So either we can go really down, or we can go really up, and it's up to us how we see it. And so, for example, let's say now if we talk about relationship and heartbreak, after that what happens? So what I started to talk about the sustainable sources of dopamine, sustainable sources of serotonin, sustainable sources of oxytocin. So that state is a perfect state to create your own sustainable love system. Because first of all, as we are in front of something new, it's easier to create habits. If you're probably very familiar with habit formation, so you have probably a new house, you have new routines, so you can start doing those. And then it's time to kind of slow down, go into yourself, thinking what makes me feel secure? What is how I'm connecting with the world?
Right.
How could I be more present throughout my day? So the monks that you mentioned, they've been doing their studying. So that's why probably they have that feeling of love, because they have their hormones covered from these sustainable sources.
Right. Yeah. And there's this tendency for people to see that they need someone to feel whole. And many of these mystics are talking about the fact that, you are one with the universe. You don't need to anything else but to realize that yourself, that it's how you respond to the responsibility comes from your ability to respond to your relationships and the world around you, and you can feel happy and loved, and you can express love without actually having this neediness, having the need to enforce someone else to be or playing the role in your life that somehow like you are needing. To me, it feels like, from a dopamine perspective, that you're needing a rush of dopamine from someone else,
and that's kind of then addictive. That's not kind of a question of love, I would say.
So that's not unconditional love.
No, most likely not, if we are just doing it for that. I think if we go a little bit on the quantum level of love, so I would see basically love as something that then can exponentially make us able to grow, like, on somewhere increased energy in a way. This is not kind of, but now when you kind of took this discussion a little bit this way, so that's how I see it, that in a good, if the real love should be kind of easy, shouldn't it? And it should make both people able to grow and lift each other. And it might be that you don't even need that love, but I think that is probably the best kind of love.
Right. So tell me about the what we started with, basically, that you don't necessarily need a relationship for love. So what do you mean by that?
Well, depends what we talk about. So if you need a relationship to feel romantic love, basically, or you can take some drugs or whatever, but you do need. But I mean, to get the health benefits and the great feeling, you don't need that. As we all know that have experienced that, waking up just having this feeling of love, feeling like everything is great. I'm so happy. I don't need anything. I feel I could just stay here. It's all good. So that's of course possible when we are living the life that makes us feel that way.
So one of the practices that seems to increase this sense of happiness and content and love is the act of gratitude.
Yeah.
That on a daily basis you practice some kind of form. It could be a meditation or.
So that's one part technique of the sustainable love system.
Right. So you see gratitude as part of that system. So
Absolutely.
How do you practice it yourself? Like, how do you do that?
I practice it kind of in a small amounts throughout the day. And but especially evenings, I try to do a kind of like gratitude meditation or some kind of like. With my first child, I remember 13 years ago said that we would always pray, and I think praying is actually that too, because you go through all this like 100 relatives and you're like having that feeling of gratitude. So I think a lot of ancient wisdom when it comes to praying. It's not it shouldn't have to be religious. We should still kind of take that time, pray, thank for the food, for that I'm able to be here, and just these little moments. I just purchased a painting a week ago, and I loved it. And I didn't even I just took it home, loved it, and then one morning I was like sitting and staring outside, and I just had this feeling of everything is so good right now. And the painting fell down, and I lifted, and it said, "It's the name of the painting was It's All Good Here right now." And it was like I got chills. So now the painting, when I walk into my house, it's the first thing I see. So every time I see the painting, I have a little love and kindness meditation, almost like, or
so
gratitude.
You have these kind of triggers in your environment that you bring out to enforce this
I think
sense of gratitude.
Yeah, I think that's why, for example, now I've been decorating my new house. I moved just very recently, so I'm kind of, whatever I do, I try to do that. It brings, whether it's a picture of a painting or anything in the house, so it creates positive vibes and helps me either ground myself or feel gratitude or all these things that I need.
Right. Okay. So what are the other components in your love system?
In my love system. So with dopamine, it's about the meaning. For me, the biggest thing I think when I was suffering was that I didn't have enough meaning in my work in the way I was practicing medicine. So then when I started my new company and started to, I wrote my first book, my work became more meaningful. I think that was very essential.
So when you were a general practitioner,
it was too much.
All these patients,
it was too high tempo, too much medications, too much something that I wasn't like happy with.
Yeah, dealing with other people's problems.
Yeah, I like that, but I always. Well, now we come to the second thing about meaning was creativity. So for me, I wasn't being creative enough in my work, or I didn't have space for creativity. And that is something I always now tell my patients or whoever my followers, that I think we are all very creative. And it's just a question of finding what's your way to be creative.
Many doctors I've spoken with who have escaped this kind of system approach to medicine, which is being in a clinic, waiting for patients to come in and dealing within a specific framework. It could be 15 or 30 minutes per patient and doing all the documentation and all that. When they escaped that by becoming researchers, or they became more focused on, let's say, working with patients who are not really patients, but who are people who are into health and well-being and so on, or maybe working with high performers or athletes and so on. They talk about the fact that that transition from this world where everything is controlled from the outside to something where they actually control how they do their work. And so many of them feel much happier now outside the system, even if they are getting a smaller salary. They would never go back to the systemic approach.
And now we get to a very important point, because I believe that one of the biggest reasons we're not feeling that great is that we don't have our place in the the system, but I'm talking about deeper meaning in the system, in the world, that we have a place in the system, which is, for example, clinic or something kind of artificial system that we don't believe. So I think when we find that meaning and creativity and kind of listen to our dreams, that what we really kind of secretly have always wanted to do, when we start to go towards that, we most likely will end up being part of the system we are supposed to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then because it's hard to be.
Many people can probably relate to this. You don't need to be a doctor in any profession.
This is also
you get sucked in by big corporations, and you don't feel you have a purpose or an identity outside of your work identity. And so when you start to build your own personal brand, you empower yourself also in terms of, you talked about creativity, maybe projects that are really something that you're passionate about. So passion is also key. So in your love system, you would see seeking in your life activities that increase your sense of purpose and passion are kind of important.
And then comes all this whole serotonin side, which is kind of balancing that. Then it's again like, if we go too much there, we will just be like, woohoo. So then we need security. So we need to think that what makes, whether it's clean home or finances, but do those in small scale and big scale, because that will keep us, not being too anxious or too on this creative side. And then again, I have a test on my site, kind of easy test whether you're dopamine or serotonin high, and then again, for dopamine high people, these things that we talked first are more important. As for serotonin high people, they can be very happy in a kind of a so-called boring job, and as long they have a security when they come home, and they have the basic stuff right. And this is interesting when you look at the couples where the other one is more dopamine, the other one is serotonin, and they always have this like, why do you have to start a new company again? And why can't we just be happy? And it's brain chemistry differences. So it's kind of interesting. And you see it even going on an airport when the dopamine high person will be like, the serotonin person would like want to be there 3 hours or 2 hours before, and the dopamine high is like I'm always the one still buying the last magazine, even it's the last call, and just then kind of enjoying the kick you get when you don't know if you will make it or not.
Right. Okay. What else do you have in your system? So
well, then it's also like traditions, all these like kind of that make me feel we're kind of like safe in a way, that I think we're a lot of like our generation, if we think, I think it would be good to have these kind of feelings that okay, every Sunday we go and do a lunch with family, because that's very great way to kind of stabilize, like give a sustainable serotonin boost, as you know that there's some structure.
Right. So there is a lack of tribalism or belonging to a community that comes from
community.
So it seems that nowadays, sorry to interrupt, but it seems like people go to cities to search for their dreams and work, and they live in isolation. They don't even know their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
They go to work, and they're pretty much just a number on someone's spreadsheet. And there's kind of a disconnect from embedding yourself in society in a way. And in tribal societies, decisions were made together on town squares. There was all these rituals that enforced the sense of belonging to your community, and so this already still exists in small town communities. But when you move into really big cities and you become a cosmopolite, it's replaced by maybe a close circle of relationships or friends, or it might be like just a lot of like people who you just know on a surface level, but not necessarily very deeply. And then there is all these political groups that you might get to be part of. There is the book called Bowling Alone. It's written by let me check what his name is. Bowling Alone: The Collapse and Revival of American Community. Robert Putnam. He spoke about the fact that there's less and less since 1950s participation in these kind of communal activities, and there is a disconnect in people's purpose. Now, Finland is a country which is full of all kinds of associations. There's probably more associations than people, but still, like what social technologies and social media has done, it has replaced the need to belong to associations, to even belong to any kind of political movements and so on. So people fulfill that need through social media and social technologies. So when they are part of a group on Facebook, or they like or share a post about something that they feel important about, that already fulfills their need of belonging. So they don't like literally organize themselves together, but it's kind of these loose connections that emerge.
And this is, we go back to the square, that then we do have a little bit of problematic situation where we're losing this third and very important part of our love system, which is the oxytocin system. So we should be more present and have these real communities, and at least be present when we are, buying groceries. So we Finns are really bad at this. Like, I used to live in LA, where you go to Whole Foods and it's always this nice little conversation with the, wherever you go. And it might be superficial, but at least it's something. Like here, people just turn their head down. And I think these are the moments that you can also use throughout your day. Of course, in a perfect scenario, we have communities. Like, I just moved to a little apartment building where I know everybody that lives there. And it gives a lot of serotonin and also oxytocin, because I have these conversations. I know that if something would happen, there are people that, I can call on. So all these kind of, it's not just that, on a Facebook, you send a message, you share something. It gives, I'm not saying that there are a lot of benefits also in that we can keep in touch with a lot of people through Facebook, and they're enormous, like,
yes, there's
positive
a bunch
sides,
of,
but But eventually, I think we will go back. I think even the teenager, when I'm not looking, so I see their already tendency that they are getting bored and they want to be more in the moment and just go towards the traditional stuff.
There's a bunch of research that shows that people can actually feel extremely lonely by being extremely social online. So it seems like everyone else's life is more beautiful and interesting than yours. So,
and especially today we were supposed to talk about the women's situation and women's health and all this. So we women, especially, we are kind of wired to compare each other to other women, and then it's all the time there. Everybody looks great. They have their house looking perfect. The kids are just like adorable. Nobody's screaming. And I was just talking about this because I was approached and somebody told that you always seem to be so energetic and like empowering, that what about when you're going through some heavy stuff, that like, how come can you? I'm like, come on, like, it's social media. How would it look if your like psychologist would be there, like, rah! Just like crying and like having nervous breakdown on Instagram? We don't do that. It's like, of course and that's why we should always remember that it's just a very little moments of people's life, and the truth can be something totally different.
Yeah, what is very interesting is I recently read a lot about psychologist Carl Jung's concept of the wounded healer.
Yeah.
That many therapists, people who practice health, wellness, they end up in that profession through their personal health struggles,
almost everybody,
or psychological problems, and so on. And there's a study that was conducted on this, and 73.9% of counselors and psychotherapists have experienced one or more wounding experiences leading to their own career choice. So it's important to remember that many of those people who are there to help others have actually gone through their own personal struggles. Now, that means that all of us are basically in a state where we could be healers in training through our own challenges. But at the moment, how it plays out is how people project themselves on these platforms is basically, when we compare ourselves to others, it's always only the high moments, when you're on a vacation, where you're in a nice restaurant, when you have a cool new relationship or met someone. And it's all even amplified with all kinds of social media filters that make everything look so vibrant and beautiful, and your skin looks perfect and all that.
And then I'm like, where is your filter right now?
So it's a filter society, and people feel less, obviously, because they see their own lives often.
And how addictive those filters are. I remember when back in the days when Snapchat was kind of a new thing, and I uploaded it, started using, and I realized that it took like a week, and I was totally hooked on filters, and I decided that this is not for me. I'm way too prone to be addictive on this. So I realized, and it's funny how then suddenly, but it's how our brain works.
Yeah. I mean, detoxing yourself from all these apps and constant rewarding and gratification through social technology is definitely something that you can make to desensitize. Damn, that's a hard word. Desensitize?
Desensitization.
Damn.
Oh, I don't know. Everybody knows what we mean.
Yes. Anyway, so here we go. So anyway, you can reduce the stimulation so that you can feel stimulated again and to be connected again. And it seems that a lot of anxiety actually comes from all this overstimulation, as we've been discussing already here, some of the mechanisms. Now, okay, so we've been going through some of those things that we can do in our lives to increase the likelihood of feeling love and being able to love. Is there something else we haven't yet touched upon?
Well, I think one thing we haven't touched is that, okay, when we have these like deep questions that we have to go through, then I could talk 10 hours about those. But once we have figured those out and find out what is meaningful for me and what is, makes me feel secure and all this, like about being present and so on. So then still we need this like basic system to make that system work. And there, I think vagal nerve, for example, it's a very super important. I actually call it the love nerve, for that reason that if our vagal nerve is not functioning right, the love hormones can't be kind of flowing.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why whatever affects vagal nerve affects our love hormones. So in a way, then we go through that. We go, let's say, microbiome. Now we have more research how microbiome directly through vagal nerve, affects our mind. So what we eat, how we breathe, all this stuff.
Yeah. What strikes me fascinating is that if we talk about the autonomous nervous system, the only part of that which is not autonomous actually is the breathing. You can consciously affect that, and through breathing techniques, you can influence your vagal nerve and vagal tone. And so definitely all these ancient breathing techniques that, biohackers are very well versed in Wim Hof method and different pranayama style breathing techniques and so on. Learning to use your breathing is the key to your autonomic nervous system and balancing things out when they go out of hand. There's actually a few questions coming online. Are you familiar with the Braverman's test? It's a test for if you are high on dopamine or serotonin and so on. It's a very comprehensive test. It's actually in the Mind chapter of Biohacker's Handbook. And then there is also all kinds of foods that you can use to maybe reduce or increase the likelihood of
basically
giving the systems.
And this is the thing that we would have been next in the chapter, to also have the building blocks,
right?
The right building blocks for the hormones. So if we're lacking something, so of course that will affect.
Yeah, sure. Like if you are deficient in several micronutrients,
exactly.
You don't have the building blocks to make even those neurotransmitters. So your anxiety might be actually lack of iron or something else.
Plus, of course, when you go to chronic inflammation or so that affects everything. Chronic stress, of course, will eat love hormones same way as it eats sex hormones. Yeah. So basically, everything is interconnected.
So if you reduce inflammation, you also increase likelihood of feeling content, happy and loved. So there is several studies that show when it comes to phytochemicals, for example. What comes to my mind, a recent article I read about is about curcumin, that curcumin can help women with PMS actually when they take higher dosages of that around that time.
Well, the PMS is also very important because I feel we should not be having PMS, as it's telling that we're doing something right. I think PMS is great because it tells us to stop and think, what are you doing wrong? Let's say if every time you're PMSing, you think that I want to leave my husband, you should probably leave him. In a way, or think like, what can you do better? Not leave, but better in the relationship. That's why, because it kind of takes down the masking hormones.
Right.
With estrogen dropping.
So what you're saying, you become more in touch with your real needs.
Yes. You put it right. So basically, it's a great tool, even it has a little bit of negative clang, but we should see it as a same way as menopause is seen a little bit, I think it, at least here in Finland, as a negative thing. If we take a look at the ancient wisdom, it was the time when women would become wise in a tribe, and they would be more respected because they would start seeing stuff better, and kind of probably because they would not need to focus on finding the guy to have more kids with anymore. So in a way, when your tribe would tell you that, you would instantly start feeling good about it, instead of being like, oh my God, I'm becoming old and I'm having this or more issues. It's how we're, it's what is the story I'm telling myself? What is the story I'm hearing?
Yes.
So this is very important whole area about female and hormones, plus the cyclicity. I must say, I posted yesterday on my Instagram story clip that I was playing tennis, and it was really kind of high tempo kind of practice or something. And then I had a huge need to post and tell that actually I always, everybody else plays their 2 hours. I always quit after an hour and a half if I'm on my second half of my cycle, because I know if I play 2 hours, it's too much and I will be irritated and more like angry, and it's too much. So I know I feel it. I don't track myself because I don't like tracking anymore. I tracked enough, and now I'm like, I'd rather feel.
Right. So what you're saying is PMS is good, and
so no, what I'm saying, this is same. No, this is not about PMS. This is the hormones that, because if as we know, stress hormones are cumulative. So if I have stress in my life and then I practice really hard, I work out too hard, so then I have too much stress. My stress sex hormones are coming down, which makes me like irritated and all these symptoms, and I might start.
So balancing it out is basically more about
listening your cycle, your cycle, your needs. How do I work out on this part of my cycle? If I'm ovulating, so I can do a more high tempo stuff and whatever.
Right. So basically timing things correctly, also like in a cyclical manner. There is a biohacker called Joe Cohen, and he became famous because he was ready to give like $10,000 to someone who helps him find love. And eventually he did find love. But with this lady, he ended up in serious problems because of her mood swings. And
the lady's mood.
Yeah, mood swings were a big problem because he was working all the time, and the lady had some mood swings. So he decided to biohack his newfound love, and so they did a genetic test and figured out that she's more likely to be low on these things or high on these things. And then she supplemented on those things, and suddenly all the mood swings went away. And now they're happy and they're getting married. So should everyone be taking lithium, or what else was on the list? To just balance things out like this or not?
But even like with essential oils, it might be that the mood swings are because of we're having too many hormone disruptors like xenoestrogens or whatever. So it's like we could do another podcast on this theme, but there's of course a lot of stuff we can do. But the point is that we should not suffer. It's just sign. It's a great sign. Like, hey, you should fix something. It might be that you're working out too hard. It might be that you're not eating enough oils. It might be that
you're not sleeping enough.
Of course.
Which is probably one of the biggest reasons why people have mood swings. It's because they just don't recover.
Tell me about it. Like when my last baby, he woke up like 15 times a night. So I knew all about how can you be happy after that? It's impossible. You are on a bad mood. Now he sleeps 11 hours straight. And I must say, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. There's a question here which is related to relationships. So there's someone who has exactly the same symptoms as you have had.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of anxiety going on with a recent heartbreak. So the question is like, how do you get over someone?
If I would have the answer like this, I would be a billionaire.
How do you accept what has happened?
I think, the key thing is that we have to kind of feel the pain and go through it. Like, this is a very interesting fact that I want to share now. I haven't actually shared it before. But when I was going through one heartbreak, or like one relationship ended, so I was kind of feeling already really fine and good and great, but I had this like really like pain around my eyes, and eyes are really connected to it's kind of, they say that they're connected to our body and even like our soul or whatever. So my own theory was that I hadn't faced the feelings enough, and then I just went in the forest and I basically like cried and screamed for a week. Everything disappeared. So here is kind of the point. What I'm saying is that we should not have the instant cure, because people do a lot of this. We start doing triathlon, or we start to drink booze or whatever to mask the pain, but then we miss that growth potential that is there. So now my message to whoever is asking is like, you just have to think that no matter how painful it is now, so this is the time for you to grow. And I promise that after at least some years, you will see why this was super important, probably a really great thing for you, and you will be a better person, you will understand yourself. Right. So now I would stop, go and, my book it's not out yet in English, but read that and understand your, like, go really think what you like what you've dreamed, and start taking baby steps towards there.
So every challenge in life is an opportunity to grow and to be able to reflect that point somewhere in the future as an important step in your own personal growth.
And then one day when you start taking these steps, you just notice that, oh my God, the pain just disappeared. It will then just happen naturally. And then, of course, all these things that we talked, I think meditation, amazing, because that will then calm the nervous system and tell like everything is okay. So you should just do these practices, tell yourself that it's all good, it's all good.
Is there a specific form of meditation that you would recommend? I was just listening to David Lynch, the great movie director, and he's a big proponent of transcendental meditation.
Yeah, like a lot of people in Hollywood.
And he saw that as a solution to all problems, basically.
Well, I even twice I was supposed to go on a course, but I never made it there. I think there's some kind of meaning on that I haven't done it yet. But as I told, we're all individuals. So I think it's good to try different. Like I started just using like One Giant Mind, or a lot of people use Calm or Breathe. I think, again, take the easy one. Start with 5 minutes, go to 10. Not be like, I'm going to do transcendental meditation for like with this group for 2 months. Like just 5 minutes, see how you feel. So I think that's kind of the way to start.
You mentioned Calm. Is that what you use? An app?
I use now just One Giant Mind a lot. Then there's Calm. There's Breathe. These are all like great apps.
Headspace for mindfulness type.
Then there's Audible had this like Sleep Better that I now used. It's like 7 little. There was something I don't know what binaural beats or what they're using, but there's something that really made me every single time like just fall asleep and in a very deep sleep. So there's plenty of options.
Is there any like biohacks that you are doing, like maybe a spike mat or a red light therapy device, or is there like anything that you?
Yeah, I do some spike mats sometimes, but I do usually spike mat if I feel like I'm not naturally a great sleeper, but I sleep very well now. But because my baby might wake up at 4 a.m. and then it's really hard to go back to sleep, so then I might use it. But especially when I was in a severe having those heartaches, so then I used spike mat a lot. Right. I think exposure to sun is very important during the middle of the day for your hormones. Like we actually forgot that. Red light, I do actually LED treatments, but I haven't done it for a little. But that's also some way very relaxing me. Even I do it for skin purposes, but same. Yes. So it's red light. What else would be there? So these are kind of the essential oils. I would like.
What specifically, or lavender?
I have 2 mixes, like Morning Boost, which has some grape. It also has actually a little lavender. Even my evening one has more lavender.
Some people are morning booze.
Yeah, but this is like I think it had evenings peppermint, sage, lavender, like all these. I think if in Finland sauna, everything that kind of like helps you to help you.
Do you do like
relax.
cold plunges or?
I've always done it since I was 12 years old. I don't know why. I've intuitively done a lot of this stuff since I'm from a countryside, from a farm. And I was a national sprinter when I was young. So I don't know if I had read it somewhere, but I always did this like kind of my own little biohacking. Even I'm not really doing, I admire what you guys are doing now, this like real biohacking thing. But yeah, on a smaller scale, I do a lot.
Is there like some supplementation or food choices that you see yourself doing over and over again?
So
because
yes,
of what you
this
know?
is important. For example, heartbreaks, all stressful states, or even we are not in a normal state. So magnesium with vitamin B612, or if we have a higher levels of stress, so I would take maybe a good quality vitamin B complex.
Yeah, because you lose B vitamins.
Yeah, and otherwise, I'm not really taking a lot of supplements because I try to eat very like density rich, like microdensity rich food.
Is there some specific like food ingredients?
Well, I must say that heartbreaks actually all these dark green.
Chocolate.
Well, that's actually the endorphins and all that. But I mean like green colors. Actually, the nitric oxide. It's kind of like
beetroots. Yeah,
it's good for your heart because it kind of opens the vessels what we need because we are kind of scrunching out to it's kind of opens. So that's why I actually use green color. Even it might be good to color your one room green if you like green. But actually, green is good color to treat heartbreak.
Right.
And then of course, when you start recover, you add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange. It's new beginnings, moving. I love the science behind colors as well.
Right. Okay, cool. So not dressing in black might help you get over.
Well, actually, at first, dress black. I've been there like half year just black, wearing all black because that pain, it protects you, and there's a moment for that. But then you should come up and start using the colors. So
be reborn as
reborn.
New.
Yeah.
Interesting. So maybe we can have the screen over. So if anyone is interested in what you're doing, they can go to docemilia.com.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not, most of the stuff is right now in Finnish, but I hope that soon there will be more in English.
Yeah, I noticed that if people want to do like the hormone test, it's in Finnish. But you're also going to launch a new podcast, writing new books. Those are being translated. So maybe people can go over there and sign up for a newsletter if they're interested.
Yeah.
Very good. So you're coming to Biohacker Summit. I want to show also what's going on there. So Biohacker Summit, the new website is up right now. So if people go to biohackersummit.com, they can see a lot of new content, including the lineup of speakers that are coming over. I'm really personally stoked to have, for example, Dr. Molly Maloof coming over. She's been just 2 weeks on a meditation retreat, probably doing a Vipassana type of thing. And so she's talking about blood sugar management, but probably off the record, when people are over there, they might want to ask also Molly about the health benefits of doing meditation. So there you go. We have Greg Potter talking about sleep optimization. Max Lugavere, who became really big in US recently with the publication of the Genius Foods book. He's been on Dr. Ott's show as one of the regular experts. He's awesome. Mad Ventures also for people in Finland, everyone knows them, but outside, those guys are hilarious. And in our recent newsletter, we also send out one of their classic Mad Cook episodes on chicken nuggets, which is probably one of the best pieces of food education that ever been made for television, for sure. It's hilarious. Anyway, a lot of cool people are coming over. Emilia will be there as well on the Barking Woman panel, hanging around. If people are interested in red light therapy, Dr. Luke Lim will be sharing some of his latest studies and research. They published on Nature magazine recently an interesting article how the brain waves can be modulated by pulsating red light. And if you're interested in the full program, we already have a preliminary program over there. It's going to be jam-packed with amazing content about health, performance, and well-being optimization. The panel on Biohacking Woman will be about optimizing female health, hormones, mood, and performance. It's not just for females, also men who are interested in biohacking their better parts and to better know also the opposite sex, as well as, I mean, looking at all these differences, there's always a question about how those differ from men. And we also have a list of our exhibitors who are coming over. That's still a growing list. And yeah, we still have a late bird going on, so the price is going to increase soon. So you should definitely book your visit to Biohacker Summit. It's our 5-year anniversary. You're all very welcome. So, Emilia, the thing that I want to ask you is also like, in terms of your own experience going through all those heartbreaks and lessons learned and changing, not really full career, but the positioning where you're kind of driving yourself and kind of being reborn like a phoenix bird out of ashes. What are the things that you learned that you want to share to people today? What should they pay attention to? I mean, we touched many things, but is there something very specific
from a heartbreak?
From
traumas?
Just like if you want to optimize your health and performance and well-being, and so love seems to be a key component for you.
Yeah, well, as I told, I learned, I mean, like almost everything from it, because I learned who I'm really. It's kind of traveling back to the kid I was. I had lost it in a way, going on an autopilot. So what that moment is once again a great opportunity to stop and go back and find the inner you, the little Emilia that loved to, was always super creative and loved to do things differently and kind of brave and not thinking whatever other people say. It's kind of what I've right now. I love combining media and science, and 5 years ago, a lot of people were like, whoa, like, how can you do that? But I think it was a good thing that I started doing it because...
So you had a lot of suppressed emotions, and because of those problems you had in relationships, you decided to revisit what really drives you and what really interests you?
No, I think the suppressed feelings, it's not even about the relationship. It's about, I had been suppressing, whether it's like, it's a culture, whoever, kind of molds us during our path.
Right.
So I'm not saying that I was suppressed in relationship, but I mean, like, you can
you were suppressed
in
your own driving interest, and you were doing
most
things
of
that
us
society was expecting from you.
Yeah, like like, to be honest, like I wanted to be an actress probably, or dancer, and I went to med school, but now I see it's like connecting the dots. Like, I love being a doctor, but I just needed the creative way of practicing
and
science.
Expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Very good.
So
with all that, I mean, thank you very much for coming along. So people can go to docemilia.com to learn more about you. And is that the same also for social media? Can they follow you?
Doc Emilia, Instagram. Yeah, still posting a lot in Finnish, but there's a translator button.
Wonderful. Amazing. So looking forward to your contribution to Biohacker Summit on 1st and 2nd of November. And with that, thank you very much for the interview.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be here.
Thank you. Okay, have a healthy rest of the week.
You too.
Cheers.